This is a review of what I consider to actually be a true audiophile switch, and it is of a $29.99 TP-Link. It's a TL-SG108e, and the E designates that this is a managed switch. So we're going to start out at our layer 1 as to why I am making the claims I'm making, and we'll work up through layer 3. So layer 1 is going to do two things. It's going to do with the transformer or the magnetics package on the switch, and it's also going to deal with the fact that we have a 25 megahertz clock that has a 3 digits in past the decimal point far as clock accuracy. So we're going to go to the data sheet for this transformer package. And I just want to point out that our leakage current is half of a microhenry at 100 kilohertz at 1 volt. It's extremely, exceedingly, astonishingly low. This won't show up on like any AP, audio precision, audio analysis. This would probably show up on the scope, but it's just going to be buried in any audio, and it's not of any audible concern because, well, they are taking this measure at 100 kilohertz. So we know that our audio perception is based on 20 to 20, and as we get older, that top end of the 20 keeps going down, down, down. I'm 47 as of this video, and I doubt that I can hear much above 14.5, maybe 15 if I'm lucky. I think 16, I'd be fooling myself. So there's that. So astonishingly low leakage current. If we talk about the clock, we have a 25.000, so 3 decimal places in of 25 megahertz clock. It's going to get multiplied out based on 10, 100, or 1000 operation. And again, we're not going to hear the clock. It's just magnitudes beyond what we can hear. So those are my first 2 points about Ethernet. It's a data standard. Another thing that we can talk about is transmission speed. My main playback system, it caches entire tracks. I concatenated a Rachmaninoff album. It's like 400 megs. On my 10 gig fiber, it'll actually transfer in about 300 to 400 milliseconds, so less than half a second. On this TP-Link, I get about 117 megs a second, and that will actually cache the entire album up in less than 5 seconds. And at that point, in either case, I can pull the cable and it just plays from local memory, and you cannot hear when that cable is either plugged in or not plugged in. On my system, and I would bet a lot of other systems. If you can hear the difference between your system because of that plugging and unplugging, and especially if you paid a lot of money for it, then I would say that you paid a lot of money for a very inferior product. All right, so IP setting, we've got a management IP of 2. We've got a default gateway of 1. So all undefined traffic gets sent to this. You do need to have a router that supports sub-interfaces or trunks and VLANs. So that's the caveat to implementing this, is you got to have a piece of hardware. Even if you have a consumer, TP-Link or Netgear or whatever router, you could run Tomato on that or WRT. And that will support this type of setup. So we're going to go down to System Tools, and we can back up and restore configs, do a system reset. We're going to go to Switching, where we can change port, enable, disable, speed, duplex, and flow control. And leave it as defaults. You don't need flow control. Flow control is only if we're going to start getting into half duplex. All right, so leave everything auto, it'll figure it out. IGMP snooping is usable, and we can enable it for IPv4 operation. If we're running IPv6 only, don't bother with it, because IGMP is not part of IPv6. It's already handled in the base protocol. Lag's going to allow us to take 2 ports, and it's going to allow us to take 2 ports and put them into a bundle. which appears to be just one logical connection. It gives us double the bandwidth. It gives us some redundancy, but it does take up 2 of your 8 ports. Home environment, you don't need it. If we wanted to, I'd have to take this out of the default VLAN technology that the switch is currently using, and then we go ports 1, 2, and simply say which lag we want and apply it, and we're done. We're not going to look at monitoring so much, but we are going to look at both port statistics. And your bad and your TX bad, TX RX bad, they're going to stay low, if not 0, in most cases. If you have some problematic cabling, you'll probably see those start creeping up. Probably unplugging and plugging the cable back in will probably throw some errors, but not to be worried about. Cable test is pretty nice, and I can go here and apply this. And we have 3 meters, and I indeed do have a 3-meter cable on this. Please keep in mind that cable testing will interrupt your connection. Let's go back to port statistics and see if that threw anything for us. Nope, that kept it good. Sometimes it'll throw an error just because it is bouncing the cable while something's going across it. Loop prevention, yes. Basically, if you have, let's say, cable going between port 8 and 6 on the same switch, that's a loop. It's bad. It's because if we do a broadcast, it goes in one port and out the other, and then back into the other port, back out, and it keeps going and ramping up and bringing your switch to its knees. It just keeps broadcasting between those 2 ports, using up whatever CPU you have. All right, VLAN. We are now moving into layer 2. So layer 2 stuff. So we have MTU VLAN. Honestly, don't know what it is. I never use it. We have port-based VLAN. We have the ability to do 6 VLAN IDs, and we put a port into it. It's not very flexible. So let's move on to 8021Q VLAN, which is what you should be using. This is going to be what you normally see. We do 1 through 4094, so we have a 12-bit VLAN space here. And I'm going to enable QVLAN. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and say that we have VLAN 10. And in VLAN 10, I'm going to put 7 and 8, and we're going to call this audio. And we're going to apply that. Now keep in mind that we still have member ports 1 through 8 in VLAN 1, and I'll show you how to take care of that. So VLAN 10 could be 192.168.10.0 with a 24-bit mask. And go and put 20 in. We're going to call this IoT, so it could be your refrigerator, could be your Nest thermostat, could be anything that, it could be a toaster for Pete's sake. So IoT devices. We're going to go port 5 and 6, and we're going to add modify. And finally, we're going to do 30. We're going to call this CCTV. So let's say you went to Harbor Freight and got the cheapest CCTV system that you could get, and it's probably cheap because there's a payload in that. CCTV systems, especially the no-name ones, are just notorious for getting compromised. So probably a good idea to put it on 192.168.30.x with a 24-bit subnet mask, and in your firewall or router, set up an ACL denying traffic from 30 to the 10 network and 30 to the 20 network, and then the only thing you can do is get out over your firewall, and when it does get compromised, it doesn't wreck everything in these other VLANs. All right, so we have applied, we're going to apply this. Now what we need to do is we need to do a few other things here. I want to go back to VLAN 1. And I want to just say not member. And then we're going to clear these 2 radios out. Alright, we're going to leave 1 and 2 in VLAN 1. We're going to remove all other ports from that. Alright, so now we see member ports 1, 2, 7, 8, 5, 6, 3, 4. We have all 8 ports segmented. We're going to use 1 and 2 ports. Later on, we'll probably use port number 1 for trunking. All right. So untagged ports go into a VLAN. They are a client. They are an endpoint device. That's when we do untagged. Now we're going to discuss tagged. I want port 1 to carry all traffic. So what I do is I go to 10. It's my audio VLAN. I go to port 1 tagged and I add modify. I go to VLAN 20. It's IoT. I go port 1 tagged, add modify. And you can see this lining up at the bottom. I'm going to go to 30. I'm going to go port 1 tagged, add modify. And finally, I'm going to go to 1, VLAN 1, tagged, add modify. So I have ports 1 and 2 as a client. They can pass VLAN 1 traffic. As a trunk, port 1 is going to pass traffic for all these VLANs. So that's what tagged does for you. You're tagging VLAN IDs to that port, so when they show up, it won't drop them, it'll just pass them upstream. And that is essentially a trunk link between two switches. Alright, so we've got that, and let's go to QoS. Alright, so we have port-based 8021p, which is layer 2 based. It's based on Mac. And we have DSCP and 8021 based. And that is for when we get routed. And when we're talking routed, every routed link has to have the same values. This isn't going to be real useful on your home network, so we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to talk about our port-based. We could go and with our CCTV system, say ports 4 and 5, get our highest priority. This is also called managed unfairness. So what we're doing is we are going to take one of the 4 queues on this and say, hey, any traffic on these ports that hits gets priority on the highest queue. And that always gets emptied out first, it gets processed first, and then we go to 3, then to 2, then to 1. We could go to port 7 and 8, which is our audio, and we're going to make this medium. We're going to apply that. Now, there is one queue above all this that you're not going to see, and that is for data control plane traffic. That's going to be like 5 and 6 queues, but you're not going to have access to that. That's reserved. All right, and then actually, let's change port 4 back to normal. Actually, lowest. We'll apply that. And we're going to change 6 to highest because that would be our CCTV. And yes, I have a dog. Now that the dog's been banished outside, we'll finish this up. And what we can do is, let's say our IoT devices on 3 4 are going to stay at the lowest, and then we can also put port 1 at the highest setting. So you don't have a lot to play with here, so this is just going to be, well, by ear. You're going to do this by ear and just play with it and see what works best for you. And the thing you got to remember, if you just set them all at the lowest, then it's not lowest compared to anything, it's lowest compared to each other, which means it's all the same. So the thing with even doing DSCP is, they got 64 levels with this, but the common, best recommendation is don't prioritize more than, anywhere from 8 to 11, 8 to 12 types of traffic, because when everything's high priority, then nothing's high priority. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to apply all this, just make sure. Okay, so it's all good. We've got it. Our audio is at medium. Our CCTV, because it protects our house, is at the highest. And then we've got other stuff at the lowest. We've got our trunk at the highest, which should always be the case here. It should have priority. And that's it. If we go to bandwidth control, we're going to do our IoT devices 3 and 4. And we're going to say that we're going to rate limit those to 2048 in and out. We don't want those devices to get any more. And don't confuse this with priority. Now, if you do lower these ingress and egress rates, it is going to create less contention. But if you do have 5 and 6 really eating up a lot of stuff, then what happens is we get back into the queuing. This is not queuing. This is rate limiting. It's totally two different things. So just keep that in mind, that they're not the same, and it's not going to be beneficial to really go into this for a home environment. And we're going to go to storm control. Now, I would do storm control on my cheap CCTV system because it can be a vector for getting compromised. And we're going to enable that. And let's limit our storm control. And this is going to be where it's getting really chatty. It's going to be sending a bunch of packets per second. 8192. And I don't normally deal with this stuff. That'll be, somebody else. So when I set up switches, the people that come in after me, the people that do security cameras, the people that do phone systems, they get in there and mess with this stuff. This isn't normally what I do as a network engineer. My job is to get end-to-end connectivity going and making sure that the network is fast to converge and resilient upon cable or port or even line card failure. That's my job. So when we get into DSCP, think more your VoIP guys. And here's an interesting thing. If you're studying for like any VoIP or you want to be on the VoIP and the SIP side of stuff, it's like you don't even get into subnetting. They don't even show you that in the books because that's not your bag. But we want to kind of cover this. So here we go. Port 4 and 5, we're going to rate limit that. And I want to do unknown. I want to do multicast and broadcast and apply. So I've got storm control to tamp down on a runaway interface. I've got rate control on an IoT device just because it's not going to need much. And there should never be a point that it's really going to saturate the link anyways. So just want to give you an example. May not be the best. And then again, QoS basic, and we do port based, and we just say, hey, what gets serviced? And then that's it. We'll get rid of that. So this is why I believe that these are actually more of an audiophile device than some of these unmanaged layer 2 switches. Some are just reworked, TP-Link or even D-Link. And, if you just don't have the management features, it's like you're losing a lot of control that you can apply over these devices. So I just want to thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, I can always make a deeper dive video. Maybe we can look a little bit higher in device and, talk about this. But generally, this will get it for you for a home network.